Can we talk about money? Because it's a thing. I think it's a thing for almost everyone I know at the moment, regardless of which country you're in. There's turbulence, right? Most of us are feeling some financial pressure at the moment, and this inevitably impacts on our hobbies. And likewise, if crochet is more than a hobby to you, if it's also some part of your stream of income, considering the financial implications is kind of huge. And if you're thinking of starting crochet as a hobby right now with all those additional pressures, again, understanding the financial implications of it as a hobby is a big thing. And here's the issue. You could go into a room with several crocheters into it and stand in the middle of it just listening to their conversations, and at this side of the room have someone talk about how great it is, how cheaply you can do stuff, and at the other side of the room lamenting their $40 skein of yarn. It's conflicting, right? And the reason it's conflicting is because the real true cost of crochet is so much more complicated than just how much a ball of wool is going to be. And so today what I want to do is break down what the real implications and costs of the hobby truly are. And I'm not just going to talk about money. I will also talk a bit about the sort of psychological and lifestyle related costs of it as well, and the physical ones indeed. So let's dive in and just chat through some of the costs of crochet. So we're going to talk about equipment first because it's just the most factually obvious part. And let's begin with yarn. You can buy yarn from a charity shop or a thrift store or a dollar store for really low prices, but you can also buy bespoke hand-dyed, hand-spun yarns for what is to most of us kind of a fortune. And there is a sliding scale along those yarns that sort of covers vast different qualities, looks, appearances, and fibers. Fibers makes a huge difference to what the cost of your yarn is. Most of the cheapest yarns are acrylic or polyester, and then you go all the way up to sort of cottons and bamboos and some of the sort of actual wools like alpaca, stuff like that, that can be a lot more expensive. But it's not just the fiber, it's the manufacturing process, it's whether it's from a big company or a small company, how it's dyed. Popularity plays a part. So yarn is expensive, is true as a statement, but it can be more affordable if you want it to be. For some people, I feel like they feel that in order to make a good quality crochet toy, they have to use a more expensive yarn. And in my experience, that just isn't true. I've had a video up in the past, which I will link to for you, where I talk about acrylic yarn and why actually I'm quite a fan of some acrylic yarns and I still use it to this day. I've recently finished a project which was made in an acrylic yarn, and it is no less adorable for being in an acrylic yarn. It wouldn't have been cuter if it was in a cotton blend. It just is what it is, and a part of it is just being choosy about the yarn that you get your hands on and working out whether the texture is for you, whether it doesn't split too much. And you can have good quality cheap yarns just as well as you can have pretty bad quality expensive ones. I've come across a couple, like constant splitting, inconsistent dyeing. It's, you know, and that's a lot more gutting when you spent more money on it. So yarn is as expensive as you choose for it to be, but it can be what is for most of us relatively affordable on the scale that most hobbyists would use it. Hooks is a tricky one. So hooks, again, you can get an incredibly cheap multi-pack. You can pick them up at charity shops, or you can get ones that sell for like $40 for one hook. Personally, my favorite hooks come from a multi-pack of ergonomic hooks with pretty flowery handles that I found on Amazon on sale. The most important thing with hooks is comfort and the throat's smoothness. So this is my personal opinion, right? Other opinions may differ, but if you've got an ergonomic handle that feels comfortable in your hand but doesn't slide out and helps with your grip, and you've got a throat, the little one moment, this is the hook I'm talking about. This bit in here, if that is smooth so that the yarn passes through it without getting stuck or hooked onto the hook, and it flows smooth like butter, then it's a good hook. And you can get a good hook
for a reasonable price online these days. Again, you can get fantastically extravagant hooks. I've got a lovely handmade wooden handle one with exchangeable tops, and I frequently admire it and then go back to my Amazon hook. And then there's the additional extras. I think people call them notions sometimes, but I don't know why. But things like stitch markers, scissors. Now, again, you can spend a lot on those if you want to, but personally I use household scissors or a little knife to cut my yarn. And stitch markers, yeah, I've got a bunch of cheapy stitch markers. I like the ones that lock. They look like little padlocks. The squirrely, circly ones tend to slip straight through. Or I just use a different type of piece of yarn. Yarn tends to stay fairly well if it's slightly textured yarn, so it just kind of slightly binds where you pull it through a stitch. That works just as well, no additional cost. So there are a lot of ways that you can save money on those little additional extras if you want to. I mean, again, you can go mad. Some people sell like really pretty individual stitch markers with like an owl on them, and it's adorable, but I would lose it in 5 minutes time down the side of the sofa, so they're not for me. And then there's additional costs that may not sort of immediately come to mind. Things like yarn storage. Now, if you just do a few projects and you have a little box, you're still paying for that little box, but you could use like a cardboard box that you've got from somewhere. So on a smaller scale, storage is okay, but for me or for other people who are quite into it, I've got like those IKEA Kallax shelving things. I don't know why I said the name of the IKEA collection, just for other IKEA aficionados out there. You can use little stacking box furniture or actual stacking plastic boxes. All that has some kind of cost associated with it, but again, you can very much find it to suit what's within your budget. And Facebook Marketplace is a great place to look for like storage solution things, because people buy stuff like that and then it doesn't fit in a kid's bedroom anymore or whatever. So you can grab some deals on there as if you fancy. Time is another cost that we have to talk about. This is a time-consuming hobby. There is a learning curve at the beginning of it, which in itself takes time. There's then the time frames of individual projects that you need to take into account, and opportunities to do various crochet things or crochet goals that you may have that you then need to fit into your sort of your time budget, as it were, for the rest of your life. So there is definitely a time cost involved in any hobby, and just like any other hobby, you have to make a little bit of a conscious decision about how much time you are happy to invest into the hobby. I also want to talk for a moment about physical and health costs, and it's a difficult one to address because obviously we're all different. I have been incredibly lucky. Other than one project that I worked on where I made a very big granny square blanket with very big yarn, which did give me pain in my wrists, I can crochet for several hours at a time with a hook that is comfortable to me with minimal breaks, and I don't have any pain for it. I get back pain from certain things that I do, and crochet does sometimes if I'm in the same position for too long, add to that. But for me, I am fortunate that it doesn't have a particularly big physical cost. However, I am, in my view, from people I've spoken to, in a bit of a minority for that. Repetitive movements cause strain. Your motions when you're crocheting may not feel like you're working out, but you really are. On a micro level, your muscles are working. We also, a lot of us have a tendency to hunch over while we're crocheting, which can hurt our backs and our shoulders. So there are absolutely physical costs, and particularly, for example, I have a close family member who has rheumatoid arthritis. If she wanted to spend a lot of time doing this, that would be really difficult for her. She'd have to do it in little bits and pieces. So we all have to take into account what our personal physical cost of the hobby is going to be. Even if the hobby appears to be quite sedentary, there is still physical and health implications to that for most people. And finally, I want to talk about like emotional and mental health costs of what we do, because it's something that is often said that crochet as a hobby is wonderful for relieving anxiety and stress and for relaxing you. And I think that that is an absolutely wonderful thing for the people that it does that for. If crochet makes you feel serene and it helps you to level out and calm down at the end of the day, then my goodness, keep doing it. Like,
push yourself, do it more, use it if it works for you. That is brilliant. But for some of us who have a tendency to be more high strung and who like the design part of it for the most part, now I can make a granny square, right? And I can feel relaxed making granny squares. I can, the same with corner to corner. I'm just doing it. I'm just flowing with it. If I'm not thinking about when I'm going to change colors or anything like that, that's great. That is relaxing to me. But for the most part, what I like to do is design crochet toys. And so I am pausing after every single round to record what I do, to plan the next round, to compare photos of the animal that I'm making, because they're mostly animals. And that is not relaxing. I love it. I totally love it. I'm having a brilliant time, even if I've got my serious concentrating face on, but I'm not relaxed. I am frequently, in fact, quite stressed by what I'm making, because I am trying so hard to reach the goals of what I'm seeing, the sort of the three-dimensional sculpture in my brain. I'm trying to aim for that, and it is quite stressful. And then for all of us, there are certain things like yarn bath tangles and buying some yarn and then realizing that it's just snapping or shedding everywhere, or the time pressures of a project. If you've decided, oh, I'm going to do this for someone's birthday or Christmas, how am I going to get there? All those things that make you stressed. If you're a person who loves the hobby, but it also is quite stressful, then that's a cost to you. It's an emotional cost, but it's a cost. And you have to take that into account when you are thinking about how to perform your hobby and how much time to dedicate to doing it. For me, all those costs, some of them I can budget and manage, and some of them I can just accept and take on the chin, and others I have to work my lifestyle around in order to get the hobby goals that I want without losing my mind. And it's an interesting thing, and one that I would be so interested to hear what your views are on as well. So please do share them in the comments section below. Do you think that I've missed out anything that's like an important or significant thing? Do let me know. Let's pop that down below as well, and I can't wait to chat to you there. And I really hope that you feel that whatever the costs are of this hobby, that they're just totally worth it, because I think for most of us they are.